All right, what's up, everyone? This is Matt Mrozik, and this will be the next work in progress on Hellboy 7.0. So last time I left you, I was showing you how I pin and stuff. He's now one piece, as you can see. The only thing that has not been pinned is I haven't added a pin to the waist. I'll do that later. But and also I decided I'm going to hang this grenade thing by a chain later, maybe off the side. So I did have two little snafus in the process. I did twice. When I mentioned don't drill through something because you have to fix it, I accidentally drilled through this grenade, so I have to putty that hole now. I'll just use some Aves, and I did the same thing on this pouch. So I was drilling my pin, and I drilled through, unfortunately. So now I get to fix that hole and kind of re-sculpt it. Not the end of the world, just creates a little more work for me, unfortunately. And I got that hole in the wrong place the first time, so I got two holes to fill there. I went ahead and glued on the Fist of Doom, so that's been pinned and epoxied. We got this pinned in place, like I showed you the magnets, the pouches are in place, the tail's in place, all that. I guess, I wonder if I could pick the, I've never done the tail this way. I don't know. I think I've always done it this way. Right now it's pinned to go this way, which is fine. I pinned the horns, so both sets of horns have been pinned. So now those can be switched out. So we got the Longhorns, and again, those are just a 1/16 inch brass rod. Same thing with this one. And then you can put in the cutoff horns, and they do fit a specific way to sit in there correctly. More so the triangle. The triangle's a very specific shape. So those are now can be switched out. For the fists with the rifle or for the gun, I just kept it simple this time. I didn't do any magnets or anything. I just I kept it simple, and I just used a 5/32 brass rod on both the gun hand and the open palm, and they fit perfectly. So just like that. And once they get a little bit paint on there, it'll be a better fit. These will get hung on later with chains, so those are to the side. So now the next step on this guy is let's take everything off. Because these guys, all this stuff over here is ready to be, you guys seeing the horns a little bit because they have a seam. Let me take everything apart real quick. Because the next step I got to do is I got to work on blending the arms and the head. The head has been epoxied on also. So I used 5-minute epoxy there. I put a pin in the middle, drill those little shallow holes, and then clamped and glued the head on. So he's looking kind of messy right now. So when I do this, I actually add quite a bit of epoxy because I like it to ooze out. And I try to use the epoxy as a seam filler because it's really hard to get down in here underneath the chin with any kind of filler. So I might have to do a little bit with Aves. We'll see. But now what I do is, and the neck is, the fit's a little funny on these. They fit really good on one side and not so good on the other. So what I got to do now is I got to sand this a little bit. So I'm getting some sandpaper. And this is, I think this is, what is this? I don't know. Just taking some of my sandpaper off the roll that I have. Just do a little sanding on camera. And I buy this by the roll because it's cheaper. And now what I do is I go through and I just kind of sand this where the neck meets. Get it pretty even. Just does two things. It kind of gets the seam line a little more even, and it gives some tooth to the resin for my filler to stick to. So I use body filler on this part instead of Aves because I can mix it up. It'll dry fast. I can sand it quick. It's quicker than using Aves because I don't have to wait 24 hours for it to set up. So I'm going to sand around the neckline like this. Where I will have to use some Aves is down here in the neckline, just really thin ribbons of it. And I'll just blend it in with my finger because I can't sand down there. You can't get sandpaper down in that neckline. That's the hardest part of filling on this kit is beneath the chin. So you just can't get down in there. So this part right here is a little time consuming too, is blending the neck. I think this is 180 grit that I'm using right now. Luckily, the sculpt has no texture in the skin, so I don't have to worry about like losing any texture in the skin because it's smooth. So I can sand on it like this and not worry about losing any detail because it's just the skin. There's no texture in the skin. There's like no pores or anything sculpted in. So I'll work a little section just at a time, blending it in. It's just easier to do that than try to do it all at once. So right now I'm kind of just getting the seam line a little even and getting any excess epoxy off the surface that I didn't get off with the alcohol when I was cleaning it up. So I'm going to sand this around, get that kind of nice and even as much as possible. I'm also going to sand the aids in the arms a little bit with a sanding sponge. This, I'm going to come in here and use a sanding sponge because it's soft and it'll conform to the shape. I shouldn't have to do a whole lot of this on these arms because it's blended really well. I can tell I did a good job of getting it blended beforehand. This is just to feather the edges a little bit. So I'll sand and I'll feel over with my fingertips to see how it feels. So I'm going to do this, and then I'll come back and I'll show you filling the neckline to smooth that out with some filler. So right now I just got to kind of do some sanding on the joints. But that's looking pretty good. I don't think I need to do really do any sanding up underneath the armpit. After doing several of these, I've gotten good at blending the filler pretty good the first time around. The first few I did, I had a lot of sanding on these edges. I had too much filler, and I just sanded down to get to blend correctly. So that's looking pretty good. So we'll come back later and we'll blend the neck. Okay, so this is where we are now. Spent a couple hours today filling holes with filler, working on the transition of the neck and the head. So, and I just gave everything a bath, so he's looking a lot cleaner than he was. He still doesn't look great, but so for example, I went in and used a body filler to fill that hole. And I've showed this before, but my choice, so Bondo, people say Bondo. Bondo is just a brand name of body filler. I really like this Evercoat Easy Sand. It's not as thick as Bondo. It's a little creamier, and it sands very, very easily. The kicker is that it's expensive. This one tub right here, this little tub, which is 30 ounces, I think I want to say it's like $45 or $50 for this thing. Now, that being said, I've bought this over a year and a half ago, and I still have like this much left. You know, if you're just doing little stuff like this, it lasts forever. When I used to paint cars, this would be after I did all my body work and Bondo work, Bondo's a thicker body filler and cheaper, I would use a skim coat of this over the Bondo because it sands super smooth and just blends really, really nice. So this was my choice for doing this kind of thing. It's a little expensive. You can get it online. I get it at my local automotive paint supply store, company called English Color. That's the same place I used to buy paint supplies from when I used to paint cars for a living. So highly recommend the Evercoat Easy Sand. And it sticks to everything. They have different kinds, but that's just the kind I use. Also went in and filled the bottom of the foot where the magnet is. So the one hole I did not fill is this hole in the bottom where I had drilled the peg. And the reason is, because I ran into this in the last time I did this, is that the fit of this peg is so tight to this hole that once you put it in, it actually kind of creates a little vacuum, and it's really hard to get out. So I just left the hole there. I'm not going to cover it up because I don't want putting it in. It's easy, but I want it relatively easy to come out too. If I covered it up, it kind of created a mini vacuum, and it'd be hard to take out. So I'm going to leave that hole open on the bottom of the base. So you don't see it, so no big deal. So let's put them together. So there's that. You can see I filled the holes here on the belt where the knife and the gun go. Got a little. See, after giving it a bath, I can see little areas that need some cleanup. So here's a little filler sludge in this detail line. So I'm going to go in here and take it out. And I just use the back side of an X-Acto blade to kind of scrape it out. No problem. And I re-scribed these lines a little bit. They got sanded down a little bit from when I was sanding the filler, so I just went back and re-scribed them. And I use an old X-Acto blade where the tip has been broken up, and I use the back side because it's a nice square. It's not going to cut into the piece, and it's going to leave a nice square channel. So that'll take a wash or a panel line or a pin wash very, very nicely later. I did the same thing here. I re-scribed these two lines on the side here just because they kind of got, oops, that was stupid. Hopefully I don't have to sand some more there. I just scraped across there trying to show you what I did. And I did a boo-boo. So I'm going to sand that out a little bit. But they got a little sanded away from when I did this process. So, and you can see here where this is filled with resin or sanding dust now. So I just gave everything a bath and soapy, like a dish detergent and water and the scrub brush. I scrubbed it all down really well. On the torso, I added two 5/32 brass pins. I drilled 2 holes in the top of this, 2 drill bit sizes bigger, just because when I do my on this part when I do the blue tack trick, there's a pretty significant space between the bottom of the torso and the top of the pants. So when you put it in there and you get it doesn't line up exactly. So I made the hole slightly bigger, and actually it worked out perfectly because when I put this in, they line up just enough, but just not enough to give me a nice snug fit. So he fits perfectly, and now he's not going to come out. I sanded around the arms just a little bit like I showed you. Filled the back of the neck with the body filler. I did one side first, sanded it smooth, then the other side sanded it smooth, and I did the center part. The center part I can actually see a little. Let's see. Okay. So I use my finger. I'm constantly running my hands over things because, like I said before, it may look smooth and it may look like a good transition, but until you really kind of get your fingertips on it, that'll tell you if you've done a good job. So like right now, I'm not feeling any bumps or high spots in the filler. So I think I've done a good job. The next step will be primer, and I typically do on this guy, at least on the upper torso, it's 2 rounds of primer. The first round is to check my work. That gets sanded down really good, and then hopefully I only need 1 more coat of primer. But the first coat will tell me if the filling work I did is accurate. So I got like some stuff in there. For around underneath the chin here, I took a very small bead of Aves and I just pushed it in there as tight as I could. I used the Q-tip damp with the safety solve and just kind of smoothed it as best I could. Like I said before, it is really hard to sand in there. So it's impossible to sand. You just can't get the right angle. So I'm hoping that after I prime this, it shows that that is smooth and I don't need to do any sanding there. But I think right now it looks good, and from what I can tell, it feels good. So I think I should be okay. We'll see. What I don't want to see is like a definite demarcation between where the head goes in and where that is. So so there's that. I got a few little pinholes that I got to fill in, but I'll take care of that. I'll take care of that with some glazing putty. I can do that right now, actually, before I prime. So I'm seeing, since I gave this thing a bath and all the dust is gone, I can see like a little. So I just take this Bondo spot glazing putty. I put a little bit on my finger, just like this, and then I'll push in there really good. And I'll let this dry for, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And hopefully that'll fill that little pinhole. And we'll just sand it down smooth with my super. The stuff sands really easily. I'll just use a super fine sanding sponge to fill that. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, so I filled the holes on the back side of the gun. Boom. Same thing on the knife. Fill that hole where the magnet is, so it'll be smooth. See, now you can see that it's clean. It wants to fall down, but by the time I paint everything, just friction will hold it in place. I fixed the little spots where I drilled through these little A's and kind of resculpted the tip of that pouch. I've got one more hole here I got to fix. Actually, I don't think I need to fill it because you won't see it by the time that's glued on. I'm just going to leave it. You won't see it. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Don't tell anyone. I fixed that little spot right there where I drilled through. Little A's. This A's I put in a couple hours ago, so I could prime it right now and it'd be okay. I'm gonna try to fix that little pinhole in the top, or on the top of the shoulder there, and then we'll do some primer and see how everything looks. But let's put them together now that he's kind of cleaned up. And I like the Longhorns; they just look really good. Typically see them displayed with the big curled horns. It's actually one of my favorite parts of this kit are these horns. Narin did a really good job of just kind of capturing. I just love how curved they are. And let's see. Yeah, so I'm gonna let that little bit of spot putty dry. Like I said, it'll probably take, I don't know, 30 minutes or so before it's completely ready to sand. So my goal today is to get this in primer, and then possibly depends on how heavy I put the primer on. Ideally, I should probably let it sit overnight to set up. I'm going to use Stynylrez. Stynylrez is like my favorite go-to primer. They don't call it a filler primer, but it actually does a really good job of filling sanding scratches and stuff like that. I do have an automotive 2K primer, meaning it's a primer with a hardener. I could use that. It's a little thick, but it cures up very fast. So what I may do, which I haven't done before, is just hit these spots with the 2K primer. The problem with that is that if you don't do the whole thing, you get some dry overspray and it can create issues. But so there he is. He's until I start putting primer on, he's looking good. So if I can get this thing all prepped and ready for paint, I can start shooting paint tomorrow. And the first step will be the skin, because I got to do the skin first before I can do. Actually, I could do the belt first, but I typically start with the skin. It takes a while. I mean, every step of this takes a while. So I think the last time I did a Hellboy, the skin takes me about half a day by the time because it's just not red. It's I base coat it with like a red brown, then I highlight with white, then I put red on top of that, then it's a shading. So it's a 5 or 6 step process to get the red that I do on these guys. But you'll see that. But he's looking good. Yeah, happy with how this is looking. Don't worry about this dirty spot. That was from my hands were all dirty with using the Aves, and it's just like I don't want to keep sanding and lose detail, but that's not going to affect anything. So yeah, looking good. So after I sand this spot down, we'll come back and do some priming in the booth. All right, so now in the spray booth, and we're getting things primed up. And my go-to primer is Badger Stynel Res. I shoot it through my Badger HPTH gun. It's a little clogged up right now, so I'm just kind of bypassing the needle because it's I get a clogged tip every once in a while. Actually, I'm going to take care of that right now. Run some thinner through it real quick. Somewhere. Get some thinner. I've already sprayed primer on a bunch of the other parts, so I'm just going to show you spraying primer on this part because it's the same for everything. So I'm just going to kind of clean this out a little bit. You can thin Badger. The Stynel Res with a little distilled water. I never do. I just shoot it straight up. So I'm putting this on relatively thick because I'm putting on several good coats. The few parts I primed earlier where I got some areas I got to work on, some sanding, and a couple little casting imperfections that I couldn't see until I got primer on it. So primer shows you all the areas that need work. Just cleaned up a little bit so it'll spray better. It's about time to do another airbrush cleaning session. I have to do it every few projects, just tear all my airbrushes down, clean them really good. It's about time for that because after the Captain America and the Deckard kit, they're all pretty trash right now, just dirty. All right. So the one thing about the Badger Stynel Res I'm not a fan of is that you sometimes get chunks in it. I asked Ken Badger about it, and he said shake it more. So I have tried like straining it. It's thick, so it doesn't work too well. It takes it forever. So I am guessing that after I prime this, I'll probably have some work to do on the torso. So yeah, so we're just gonna put on. I got a clamp on here to kind of hold it. Close the door a little bit so I get enough draw from the booth. You can see I'm putting it on nice and wet, especially where I got the body work for the filler. We're going to put it on particularly heavy so I can sand that down and smooth it out. But for my initial spray there, it looks the body work looks good and the filling looks good. As it dries down, it'll show me any imperfections. I'm not worried about the Fist of Doom yet. I'll worry about priming that when I get to it, when I paint it. Because I got to mask off the body before I can do that anyway, so I'm not going to worry about priming right now. Just worried about the skin. So I got this big clamp on it, and I use a heavy duty one because I can clamp down on it really good, and I can move this guy around, and he's not gonna fall or anything. So I got to get up underneath the chin and stuff, turn him upside down. So I'm going to put this nice wet coat on. I'll let this dry probably 20-30 minutes. I'll come back and do it again. Another couple nice wet coats, and then that way I'll let it dry overnight. That'll give me enough material I can sand smooth. It's like the neckline blended pretty good. Not seeing anything that's jarring as far as how it blends, so I think I may have done a good job on that out of the gate. We'll see. So one thing on this piece, because you have to paint the head on the body, it's really easy. I tend to get a lot of dry spray up underneath the chin, especially when I'm painting and doing my sealing. So that's always a challenge to keep that from getting dry spray and getting a texture. So that's it. I'm gonna let this dry really good, and I'll come back and do another wet coat. I already did the pants; those are drying. These have one nice wet coat on them already, and these look. I'm trying to think if I saw anything that needs work. I don't think so. Maybe sanding it here a little bit here and there. One area I did see that popped up was on one of the pouches. You can see there I got to do a little filling there. There's an air bubble, a little bit of a mold line. So we'll go through and sand those down. Fill them. I think the hands turned out really nice. Don't need any work there. Maybe a little bit of sanding right there. There's a little indiscrepancy on the edge. For the most part, those look really good. Gun. Hand looks really good. Got a little bit of sanding I got to do right here on the sight. A little rough edge, so we'll sand that. So yeah, so not a whole lot that I got to go back and take a look at. It'll be really telling on the torso once this all dries down and see what it looks like. So I'm gonna let this dry, put another wet coat on it, and then we're gonna let it dry overnight. And then tomorrow I'll sand down the torso and any areas that need work on the other parts, give it another coat of primer, and it'll be ready for paint. So I'll show you sanding the primer tomorrow when that's ready. All right, continuing on. So yesterday we primed everything. It's been let set overnight. So now we're gonna go through and inspect these parts and fix anything that needs to be worked on and sand down the first coat of primer on the torso. So after I prime everything, especially when I put on like really wet, I let it sit overnight just to give it a chance to dry. And now we go through, we're gonna look at all the parts and make sure, see what needs to work. So like I'm looking at this horn and this looks really good. I'm not seeing any pinholes or anything. So this is, let me sand it down a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go ahead and sand this down. Get ready for another round of primer. Basically, we're gonna go through, sand everything smooth, and then we'll do a second round of primer, and then it should be ready for paint. So this part doesn't take too long. What will take a little time is about to fix something. We gotta use a little spot putty. And I know I got one spot on one of those pouches I gotta fix. It's got a pretty good sized pinhole. So I'll do this. I'm not gonna do a whole lot of this on camera because it's really boring. It's just sanding. Lots of sanding on this piece. Anytime you have especially in traditional kits, you got a lot of more prep work. The 3D stuff, if the print has been cleaned properly, you don't have too much of this to do. It's only if the print hasn't been cleaned real well and you got a lot of print lines you got to deal with. The Punisher versus Walking Dead kit is a prime example. That anything from Showboat models basically is a prime example of something that needs a lot of work even though it's been 3D printed. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And this will actually, as you can see right there, I got a little bit of a line. So that's actually the mold line that I didn't see until I started sanding. So that just takes care of that. And this piece is ready for its last round of primer now. So it'll take me about, I don't know, maybe an hour or so to go through and do this. Particularly on the horns and the tail. And the horns, since I do those glossy, it's really important to have those perfect. So that looks good. I'll do the same thing on the other horn off camera. Little short guys really don't have to do anything to because they're kind of beat up anyway, so I just leave them as is. Excuse me. Look at the gun. This looks good. You don't see my putty work, so that's good. So this is ready for paint. Let's look at the knife. Again, you don't see my putty work. And there's no mold line. So that's ready for paint. Look at this hand. I did want to, there's a little nick right there. I'm just gonna sand it flat with the sanding stick real quick. And that's it. And I'll just hit that, I'll just spot that with a bit of primer. Other than that, this looks really good. Let's see, this gun, remember we had a little little rough spot right there. For that, I need some sandpaper, which I have right here. So I'm just get in there with the sandpaper and sand that smooth. Just like that, and we'll just spot that with some primer. Other than that, I think this looks really good. A little bit of a mold line right here. And the hammer. Sand that a little bit, just real light. Take care of that. Oh, see a little stuff here and there. A little rust spot here on the drum. Take care of that. So just spot sanding here and there in some areas. Looks good. All right, so that's ready to go. Another thing of primer. These little pieces usually are really good. Don't have to worry about them too much. That's ready for paint. This guy's ready for paint. Horseshoe's ready for paint. The cross is ready for paint. The pouches, for the most part, this is the one that's got the little spot, so I'm going to hit that with the glazing putty real quick, and I can just do it right on top of the primer. It'll be a little thicker than before, so I'll have to let it dry longer. So again, just put some on my finger. I'm going to fill it in and let that sit for a while. And we'll sand that smooth and hit with the primer again. Other than that, that piece looks good. A rough spot there on the top. Some of the rough spots I don't mind because of the nature of this piece. If it looks like resin slag or something like that, then I take care of it. Some of it's just in the sculpt, and I don't really mind that too much because this is a traditional sculpt. That's the subject matter. It's Hellboy, so you know he's like there's a mold line there, so I'm gonna take care of it. Oops. I'm just using a super fine sanding sponge, which equals about 400 to 600 grit sandpaper. They don't give you an exact grit; they give you a range on these guys. So take care of that mold line. Just like that. And so when I do the second round of primer, it won't be as thick. It's basically it'll just act as a sealer, and I don't have to wait overnight. I can seal it. I can do my second round of primer, wait 30 minutes and start painting. So my goal today is to get the red done on Hellboy, and I'll have to let that cure overnight. Depending on what time of day I get this done, his red sprayed. Depends if I have to let it sit overnight before I can do the fist. Actually, I'll have to let it sit 24 hours before I can mask off the Fist of Doom. Just going through and checking these. Alrighty, looking good. Let's look at the pants. It's a good little. I don't want to sand too much on the pants because they've got some kind of leather texture sculpted in, so I want to avoid sanding the pants too much. There's like a little resin sludge right here I'm going to take care of. You can see it right. I'm not sure if it's showing up in camera, but it's right here. Yeah. From what I can see, yesterday the boots look pretty good. Yeah, this looks good. I'm not seeing anything that's sticking out. All right, so now the torso, I will sand this all down because I had all that filler on it, and it just gives me a really good smooth surface for painting. So let me do this other horn real quick. And the sanding sponge I'm using right now, it's not brand new. It's kind of used, so it's not super aggressive. So depending on, these sanding sponges last a really long time. I really don't ever throw them out because brand new, they're really aggressive. And as they get used, they get less aggressive. So like, even though this is technically a super fine, it's acting more like a new ultra fine. It's not cutting as aggressively as if it was a brand new sanding sponge. Put my camera down so I have to hold my hands up because I get tired. So I may get a new one for the torso, new sanding sponge. This is getting clogged up. You can wash these. They tend to get a little worn out when you use them wet, and it creates a really muddy mess when you use them wet. But you can wet sand with these. The plus of that is you don't create any sanding dust because it's all captured in the water. If I was doing this wet sanding, I have a big towel out here with a little thing of water next to me, and I'd be creating a big muddy mess. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Nice. You can tell if there's areas that need to be worked on right away. If you sand, you'll see a mold line pop out. You may see a bubble pop out that you didn't see previously. That's looking pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna get a new sanding sponge. Hold on, I gotta move the camera for a second. Thought I had one out here. So here's a brand new one. And I'm just gonna cut it up into a couple pieces. Because it's hard to use it as a whole. And what I'm really happy about is my putty work is amazing. You don't see it at all. So I know I've done that really well. So I'm gonna go through, I'm just gonna get this light sanding. What I want to avoid is really my putty work. I just want to hit it very lightly. I don't want to sand the putty anymore because it's blended perfectly. I do see a little demarcation of my putty work right here in the neck from yesterday on the 8th, so I'm going to hit that a little bit, see if I can see. I'm not sure if anyone else will really notice it, but I know it's there, so I'm going to just hit that a little bit. Like I said, it's almost impossible to sand in that neckline, so I almost don't need to sand this at all. I may just kind of spot sand it. It looks really good. It's actually the best I've done on one of these right out of the gate. Yeah, I don't know. I may be causing more work by doing this. Just gonna do it real light. I'm not putting any pressure on the sandpaper. I'm just kind of letting it do its thing. I try to avoid the veins because I don't want to sand those down and lose those. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, I see two little spots. I know it's just one spot. One little spot right there in the armpit's kind of like a little pit that I missed with the putty, so I'll hit that with the glazing putty just to fill that in a little bit. It's minor. But the blending of the neck looks really, really good. I'm gonna avoid sanding the face, I think. Got one little spot here on the chin. And that's it. I'm just going to kind of sand over this real lightly, fix any little imperfections, and I'll hit it with primer one more time, and then we'll paint. So next time we come back, we'll throw some paint on. Okay, so I sanded everything down. I reprimed it. Just a real quick coat of primer, and this looks really good. So now I'm going to spray my base tone in preparation for the red. So the last few I did, I found like a great combination. I'm out of the color I typically base coat in, so I kind of made up my own. Excuse me. So I use a lot of Mr. Color paint. So basically I mixed up pretty close to equal parts of number 29 whole red and number 81 russet, and came up with this kind of brownish maroon kind of color, dark maroon. That's going to be our base coat. And if you haven't watched my videos before, red is really shitty at covering. So I use that to my advantage when I do all my shading stuff. So I'm going to put these over to the side so I don't spill them, because I usually don't mix custom colors, because if I run out, if I spill it, then I'm screwed. So I usually don't do it. I'm going to have my respirator on because Mr. Colors are a lacquer, and I'll be spraying quite a bit of material. So I'm going to just show you spraying the torso, and then I'll just do the rest off camera. But we're just spraying a base coat now. I got my Iwata HPTH brush, and we're going to go. And I normally don't pay attention to PSI, but on this guy I crank it up a little bit, and I've got my fluid nozzle turned down, so I'm not going full bore, so I don't put on the paint too wet, and I don't waste a lot of material. So let's just go ahead and spray some paint. So the important thing is to put on a nice kind of mist layer first. Don't try to cover it all at once. Let that dry, or what we call flash off. Flash off simply means letting all the solvents escape. Because if you don't do that, you can run into problems later with it curing. So I'm going to put my mask on now. Alright, so that's the first coat. You can see it just kind of went over, so I made sure I got even coverage. The base coat is actually the most important coat of everything because that's going to lay the groundwork for everything. We want to make sure it's nice and even. So I spent a lot of time on the base coat because I want to make sure I have even coverage over everything. It's all the same. So I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, and then we'll come back and do another coat, and then I'll spray the other parts. Alright, so I waited about 5 minutes. I'm going to open up the fluid nozzle on my brush a little bit more, get some more fluid, more paint coming out, and we'll do some more. The hardest parts are to get are under his armpits because the angles are so weird to get paint in there. So that's what I'm kind of fighting right now, is trying to get the airbrush in there. So you see me, I hit those areas quite a bit, so I want to make sure I got paint up in there because it's hard to see. I got it. It's important to spray it at all angles upside down. Make sure you get paint up in the eye sockets and under the chin. So you can see I'm putting it on pretty wet now. I'll probably do this coat, let this dry for about 5 minutes, and do one more kind of overall coat, and we should be good. I don't care if it's glossy or matte finish. I don't care about the finish. I just want to make sure I got even coverage. It'll dry to a nice sheen to it though, because it's a semi-gloss paint, and I got a really smooth surface. All right, so I just ran out of paint. We'll let this dry for a little bit, and then we'll do one more coat on that, and then we'll paint the hands and the horns. I'll just do that off camera. And then once this is dry, actually I'm not going to show spraying the next coat. Once this is dry, I'm going to put one more kind of mist coat on just to make sure I got even coverage. Spray the hands and the horns. I'm going to let this all dry for about an hour or two. I want it to get nice, and I want it to dry down. It'll darken as it dries. So, because I don't want to start doing my shading until it's had a chance to dry down a little bit, because then that'll affect it. That'll affect the final color. So, let this dry a little bit, and then we'll come back and start doing the highlighting in a couple hours. Okie dokie. So this has had a couple hours to dry and it looks really good. So the next step is to add highlights to this. And what I'm going to do for that is my Mr. Color GX1 white. I've got it in my airbrush, got it thinned down. So I got my air pressure turned down a little bit. I made to thin this a little bit more. It's coming out a little speckly, so thought I had it thinned just right, but maybe not. So I'm going to get a little more thinner in 1 second. Alrighty, so I thinned it down a little bit more. I got my air pressure where I want, so just testing it here in my hand. Got the right consistency. So this part takes a while, so I won't do the whole thing on camera. But basically, I'm going to go in and hit all the high spots. And this is where I kind of move this around in all the light and everything, make sure I hit everything. So just pick a spot and start going. Just concentrating on the tops and the muscles. Just like this, just go around and hit all the tops of the muscles. The closer I get, the tighter I can get. The more dramatic I can make the shape. If I back off, it's a softer transition. So these big muscles, I back off a little bit. When I get to a smaller muscle, I get a little bit tighter. Sometimes they're hard to see, that's why I gotta keep moving this thing in the light. But since red doesn't hide very well, you're gonna see all this through the next layers. So like this big neck muscle, I just kind of let it fade up. And then backed off pretty far. This is a big muscle. I'm sitting on my bench, I'm at my work booth, even though I'm using the lacquer. I don't get a whole lot of overspray because I got my air pressure turned down pretty good. Every time you see a high spot, I just hit it. There's a lot of muscles in the sculpt. A lot of them you don't see until you start moving it around. Then we'll even hit the wrinkles in the elbow. So these I get real tight, so I don't get too much overspray and lose the detail. And then I go back after I do this, and I spray my kind of my main red color, and then I go back in and hit the shadows again. So it's several layers. That's big, like on the bicep. Here's a big muscle, so I'm gonna back off. A real nice soft transition. Like that. So let's do a little bit more of this on camera, and then I'll show you too what it looks like when it's done, because this will take a while. But that's kind of the idea. Hard part's like under the neck and on the face and stuff because it's really hard to get the airbrush in there. Not a little too much underneath the pec there. All right. And to get underneath the chin and stuff, you turn them upside down to get the Adam's apple and this lacquer paint dries pretty quick, so I can keep working and moving it around, really not worry about my hands messing it up. Collarbone here. And then the face, there's a lot of detail in the face too. So like we'll hit the I'm going to thin it a little bit more to get in there so I can get tighter. So just thin the paint a little bit more. Kind of need a real thin to get that tight. So I have just a very little bit of paint coming out. But I think you get the idea. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go get all the highlights and everything. And I'll come back and show it to you. Alrighty, so here we go. This is what the torso looks like. The highlights all sprayed. And I did the horns. And on these guys, it's important to make sure that you have the fades the same length at the base and the tip. Those look really good. Did the tail. Same thing. Did the hands. And then we did the other horns. So next step is to go in the spray booth and spray on the main red color. Alright, for the next step, we're going to use Mr. Color GX number 3. It's called Herman Red. I guess that's how you pronounce it. Got that loaded up my airbrush. And we're just kind of mist this on, building it up. Until I kind of get the color I want. Oop, I got a couple splatters here from something. Should be okay, because I'll just build it up. I think I'll just blend them in later. So this process is difficult because it's very important that I make sure I get the same amount of paint on all the parts. So I'm going to mist that on, let this sit for a little while. I'm going to get the other parts and do the same thing. I hope I have enough paint because my hobby store is closed right now because of the COVID. So hopefully I got enough. Turn my air pressure down. So I don't get so much overspray, I get more paint on the pieces. I just kind of mist it on. I'm not laying it on real wet. I'm misting it on so it's a nice even coverage. The horns are hard because of the shape. It's really hard to get to make sure they're an even coat. The way I do this, that base color just gets a kind of a deeper red, and where I got the white will be a brighter red. And once I'm happy with this, I'll let it dry for a few hours so it can dry down, and then I'll go back in and tackle the shadows a little bit more, deepen them a little bit more. And the tail's hard because of the shape to get an even coat. It's easier to get an even coat if you back off and mist it on rather than try to get close and spray it on wet. Just atomizes better. And just with this experience, you learn how to kind of blend areas that may have not gotten hit as much. If I see a little kind of a bright spot, just kind of go in there and hit it again and blend it in. So that's the first coat. Now we can go back and do the second coat on the torso because it's had enough time to kind of dry a little bit while I did those other parts. To crank up air pressure a little bit. I'm going to hit the underside of everything again first. I may have to do something about that splatter. We'll see. We'll see if it blends in later. So now we're starting to kind of get the red I want. So I'm putting on a little bit wetter this time, not real wet, just a little bit. Just a little bit wetter. Try to get a little bit more coverage. And now we're starting to blend together real nicely. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. And if I see a bright spot, I just kind of hit it again. Try to keep it as even as possible. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. Alright, and with that set, I'll do another coat on the other parts again. We'll little bright here. I'll just go ahead and show you this whole process. This part doesn't take too long. If I remember correctly, it's about 3 coats to get the color I want from the previous ones I've done. The hands tend to get a little darker than the rest of the body, but that's okay, I don't mind. I'm sure it's all out of focus. I'm sure my camera is focusing on the background, especially on these smaller parts. How am I doing? Okay. Doing pretty good. Yeah, it's looking really good. Okay. Alright, we're looking sharp. So if I wanted a brighter Hellboy, I could basically stop at this point if I wanted to. But I tend to like a rustier color. So that's why I go back and do the shadows again. Alright, so I'm probably have to mix up some more paint. I may have enough in here to do the torso again. Let's see. Bring out a little bit better this time. With every layer, I put it on just a little bit wetter. It's looking really shiny in camera. It's not that shiny. Just because of the lights. So this right here is looking pretty good. This little spot here. My little splatters blended in, thank God. The little splatters I had were from my airbrush, and luckily they landed on a highlight, which made them blend in. This paint is a bitch to touch up if something happens to it, because there's so many different layers. So much paint I got left in here. Okay. I'm gonna let this all dry for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna mix up a little bit more paint, and then we get my iWAD HPTH, the big spray gun. I'm just gonna kind of mist over the whole thing to make sure it's blended in real well. But we're in a really good spot here. Not sure if it's showing up in camera. It doesn't look like it, but my shading looks really good. It's real natural, and it'll look even better once I go in and bump up the shadows some more. We'll darken them down a little bit just so we get kind of a really deep red on them, but we're looking good so far. So once this dries for about 15 minutes, we'll come back and I'm going to mist another coat on everything, and then we'll let them dry. Okay, so this is the last step of this color, and basically I'm just going in and I'm misting it on really light. So like right here, I see a little spot where I see a little too much white, so I'm just going to kind of fan it on so it brings that down a little bit right there. Again, this is real light. I'm not really concentrating in one area. I'm just making sure that I get all the little bright spots knocked down a little bit. So yeah, it's looking really good. So I did all the other parts already. We're gonna let this dry for about an hour or so, and then I'll go in and do the hit the shadows one more time. Then we'll go from there. Oh, that's weird. Oh. Okay, sorry. So next step is we're gonna go back and pump up the shadows. And normally what I do is I'll go in with a little deep clear red and a little clear black and do that, but I'm out of clear black, so I just put a little bit, just a touch of just regular black in my deep clear red. So I got this really dark kind of red going on. It's almost black. So we're gonna try this out because I typically do it a different way, but since I'm out of a color, we're gonna try something else. So right now he's pretty bright. I want to darken him down a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of real loose and real light with this color because I don't want to. Just going to go in here and pump up the shadows a little bit. I'm going to do the nipples. I gotta be real careful. This is darker than I normally do on this step, so it's fine. You gotta be careful. This is going to really punch it up a little bit. Again, if I got a big soft muscle, I back off and just kind of mist it on lightly. I'm treating the deeper muscles more than the bigger muscles. This part goes pretty quick because the shadow's already there. I'm just kind of emphasizing them a little bit more. And then we'll mist this over real lightly. I think you get the idea here. Getting rid of the armpits pretty good. I don't want to cover up my previous work, I just want to accentuate it. Add a little bit of a shadow around the Fist of Doom. Help separate that. Now it's coming together. I'm not sure if this is showing up in camera. It looks really shiny in the camera, but it's not. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to mist over the whole thing super, super light with this color. Just to darken it all down just a little bit. We'll tie it all together. Look at these shadows under the neck. They'd be pretty dark. And the ears. Around the hairline a little bit. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's looking sharp. Starting to get to where I want it to be. It'll really tie in when I mist this all over, just to knock it all down just a little bit. But the chest is looking really, really good. Pretty much right where I want it. I think the eye stuff is pretty good. I don't do any pastel work on Hellboy. I do it all with airbrush. His head's got some little indentations, kind of imperfections on the, so we're gonna hit those. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Just make sure I'm consistent all over the place. It doesn't look spotty. Add a little shadow to the wrist here, where the other hands plug in. I'm also going to go in and do the veins here in a second. I'm going to get the horns out and do those. Get those shading down to the horns and the hands. That's looking really good. Pretty happy with that. So let me put this aside. This is going to be a long video. Okay, for the horns, I just spray at the base of these, and I can make these pretty dark. On these I just spray from the very bottom going up. And it makes it fade to that almost black to red. Just like that. Now if I get the red done tonight, it'd be great. And then tomorrow I'll work on the portrait and the hair and the Fist of Doom. Right, let's check these side by side, make sure they're pretty close. Yeah, they look good. The full horns, we do the same thing. We do the base, then we do the tips. Work it from the bottom up, let it fade. So it's almost black, but it's a really super deep dark red. Then when you gloss these up, it looks really, really sharp. We'll do that tonight too. So to get a really soft transition, you just let the paint kind of fade up. You keep the same angle, and you'll get an even fade. That looks good. And the tips I go this direction. Because I don't want to. What I don't want to do is spray paint in this part. So this actually kind of go the opposite way, come this way, so I don't get paint where I don't want. Again, just working around. Like that. So we'll get the other one out and try to match it. And then we'll do the tail the same way. See, I'm putting this on pretty wet. The great thing about these lacquers, you can spray them wet and they're not going to beat up. They're not going to run. You can run them, but you'd have to really hose it on. Unlike an acrylic where you have to kind of really do it really slow. I can build them up a little. I can build these up a little quicker. Especially since I got a little bit of opaque black in there. It's building up pretty quick. Alright, let's compare with the other one as far as how high the fade is and amount. That looks pretty good. Try to get them to match as closely as possible. Don't have to be perfect, but do one more little round, I think will be good. Now the tip, just the tip. So I'll spray the gloss coat on the horns too tonight, on both sets. Maybe I'll do the cutoff ones matte. Maybe I'll do that. I think I'll do that. Let's change it up a little bit. I'm going to do a little dry brushing on them, which I haven't done in the past. I actually kind of like this better than the other ones I've done because if I do the deep dark red then the clear black, then this looks black. I'd rather have this like really dark red than black, so I think this is working out better. All right, let's check out that fade compared to the other one. Looks pretty good. It's pretty good. So those are good. Now the tail, same way. So again, we're just adding to the shadows that are here. You can see all the work I did below this. So we're using transparent colors. I would never just do red and then shade with like another color and be done. You can really get some really nice deep tones and reds, since red is such a poor paint and covering. And it's like that with any paint. When I used to paint cars for a living, So if I was painting a red car, I'd have to put twice as much paint on the car to get the same coverage as most other colors. There's just something about it, it doesn't hide well, doesn't cover well. So we use that to our advantage on these techniques where we're base coating, highlighting, then putting the mid-tone down, and then adding shadows back into it. There's a lot of depth. That's good. The tailor can go this way because it's not going to really hit the other part. It doesn't curl as much. So it's a pretty good day when I can get on a Hellboy when I get the red done. It's a time-consuming process with the different layers, the cure times between layers. So that's looking pretty good. Then we're gonna come in here and shade the hands. Maybe I'll see what I'm doing here. Oop, not a paint. I'll have to put that, it's a custom mix, I'll have to put it somewhere so I don't get it mixed up. The nail beds. Oh, I'm not in frame, sorry. The hands are a little hard to get into because it's hard to get the airbrush in there. And like I said before, the hands tend to get a little darker than the rest of the piece, but that's all right. I don't mind. Okay, so that's it for that. Now I'm going to crank up the PSI a little bit and open up the airbrush. I'm going to just really lightly mist this on. This deep dark red is kind of almost like a bruised red or a wound red. A wound red which has a little purple in it. Actually, first I got to do the veins, so let me crank this back down. Hold on. Forgot about the veins. So I get the air pressure down pretty low. Crank the airbrush in. Okay. And this is a little tricky. I'm going to darken the veins up. Crank up the air pressure a little bit more. Come on. Like that. I'm going to do this off camera. I'm going to do the veins and then blend it all in and come back. Alrighty. Not sure if it's showing up on camera, but here he is after we do all the veining and blending in. He looks really, really good. Got one little fuck up right there. I nicked this forehead on something in the spray booth, so I'm going to brush touch that up and try to get it to, I'll match it with as close as possible, then we'll seal it. But yeah, this looks really, it looks awesome in person, so super happy with that. I want that dry really well before I seal it. I'm going to go ahead and blend in the horns and the hands. Same way, I'm just going to do a quick mist over. And they'll bring everything into the same tonal family. And then I'll let all this dry. Oh, maybe an hour or so. Oops, around the paint. Got just enough paint left to do what I got to do. So I'm just knocking down that bright red just a little bit. Let's blend it all together. Tail. I should have just enough paint to do what I gotta do. See how much more I got. I wouldn't mind blending the small horns a little bit more. This has a little bit more. Nope. So we're gonna I'll let dry really good. It's got a lot of paint on there. I'll seal the Hellboy, the torso and stuff with the Krylon crystal clear flat, and then I'll show you how I gloss coat the horns. I got a lot of questions about the gloss coat I use, so I'll show you guys that, and then that should be it for today. That's all I can do on the torso. I got to let everything dry really good. I can work on the Fist of Doom tomorrow after the torso dries. So we'll come back and show you how to gloss the horns. Alrighty, so we let everything dry for a little while. We're going to go and show you how you gloss coat the horns. So I use this two-part clear coat. It's called WIP. It's just a European automotive clear coat. Relatively simple. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. So I need 4 parts of the clear. So I'm going to mix up more than I need. I'm going to mix up 4 mils. We'll see how much we need. We'll do let me put this back. Let me start over. I'd rather mix up more than I need and then have to make more in the middle. So I'll take 4 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. This will give me about a little over 12 mils of sprayable clear. Now, unfortunately, I lost the lid to this hardener, so hopefully it's still good. Nope, it is solidified. Shit. So note to self, if this is exposed to the air, it solidifies. So I can't do that. Fuck. Alright. Option number 2 if I have it. I don't know if I do. Crap. Alright. I'll have to gloss coat the horns some other way because I don't have... I don't want to use a rattle can. That's not going to give me the super glossiness I want. I don't have any Mr. Color Clear. That would give me my second choice. So I'm going to have to order some more hardener. Or go to the automotive paint store tomorrow and see if I can find some. So hopefully I can gloss coat the horns tomorrow, because I can't do it right now, which really kind of pisses me off. Alrighty, so we'll come back to that. Alrighty, after hitting it with the Krylon flat, this is what we got. It's a little darker in person than what you're seeing here, and a little more contrasty, but looks good. So unfortunately I can't gloss the horns until I get some more hardener. Hopefully I can go to my local automotive supply store tomorrow and get some hardener, because to get it from Amazon, it says I won't get it for a few weeks. So I want to get those glossed up because they need to really cure for a couple days. I was able to touch up that little snafu on the forehead, no problem. I just found some paint and matched it. But looking good. So I'm going to call this work in progress done. It's the red, how I do the red. And super happy with this. So next one, I think next work in progress, I typically get like the top part done and then work on the pants, because the pants alone are at least a day, if not 2 days, to do the belt and the pants. That doesn't include the stuff that goes on the belt. That's just the belt and the pants. Because the leather technique on this is time consuming. So I may try something a little different, kind of same technique, but different paints. Usually I use watercolor. I may try Jesse's paints to avoid getting the texture I get. I like the texture, but I kind of think I want a smooth leather rather than a kind of textured leather. So that's it for this work in progress. So stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.